show up on this planet in the same state of confusion and terror. It's like if we all left this building right now, just disappeared and reappeared on another alien planet, no memory of ever being here or being a thing, just all of a sudden you exist. What the fuck? You got a couple of basic instincts. I'm hungry, throw food down this hole, and I'm cold, so wrap me up in something. But other than that, what the fuck is going on? Anyone? And there's other people who showed up just as fucked up and confused as you are, but they've been there longer. So they could give you a few hot tips. Yeah, if it stinks, don't step in it. And someone said eat kale, and that's good for you. And don't get a LinkedIn profile because the spam is endless and you'll never use it. But
I wasn't really ready to get started yet, but basically it's the blind leading the blind. They impose life on you. They don't really give you any survival skills. You're basically left to fend for yourself. They give you food, clothing, and shelter, but they don't really teach you much of anything.
Other than that, I don't really have any answers for you. And then some of you sadists take this to the next level where you say, let's pull that same practical joke on somebody else who doesn't exist.
So somebody imposed life on them, and because they are sadistic, they're going to impose life on other people. Monkey see, monkey do. They didn't learn anything from their own suffering and exploitation. They're going to turn around and do it to somebody else.
Fuck me in the front, potato. We'll watch it fall out all terrified and confused, and we'll laugh at it for as long as that joke stays fresh. And then we'll wait till his knees are strong enough to hold up his upper body weight, and we'll make him work around the house forever for nothing. Sorry, black people, you do not corner that market on slavery. Every single one of us was born into indentured servitude.
And as a black person, I'm going to co-sign on that. We're all slaves. Maybe not chattel slavery, but we're wage slaves. We're slaves to our parents. None of this is voluntary. This is involuntary servitude. We're abject slaves to our parents. When you're a child, you don't have any rights. You don't have a right to freedom of speech. You don't have the right to own property. You don't have the right to protection from cruel and unusual punishment. You don't have a right to freedom of religion. You're just a mini-me who's supposed to be indoctrinated by your parents and just obey, right? I just learned from the passing of my father. It's not even like I just learned this, right? I really tried hard to try to maintain a relationship with him, but I've already realized along the way that he really did not give a fuck about me. Like, he cared about me to the extent that I was useful, to the extent that I gave him narcissistic supply. But if I was not going to be useful to him, he basically didn't give a fuck. It's just, I mean, I had already blocked this out of my mind, but I wasn't his slave until the very end. So because I had substantial performance, right? That's the term in contract law, substantial performance. I obeyed him for most of my life, but because there was a short period where I just couldn't tolerate his abuse, he basically just fucked me over. So I was supposed to be his slave throughout the entire time. Now, I was going to play this clip, but you know what? I just want to go ahead and get started because I already have, oh gosh, I have 6 people here. Let me go ahead and show y'all this what slavery is. I told y'all before that slavery, according to Plessy versus Ferguson, is the absence of the right to the disposal of one's life, liberty, or property, and property, not or. So it's all 3 elements. They impose life on you, so you don't have a right to dispose of your life because they already imposed it on you in the first place. You don't have the right to dispose your services. Your services belong to your parents. You're just an appendage of your parent. And you don't have a right to dispose of your property. Whatever property you have, whatever you have belongs to your parents, even if you earned it yourself, even if you get a job, even if you build something as a child. You're not a separate, autonomous human being. So let me show y'all this definition. This is the 13th Amendment. Because within the anti-natalist community, we often discuss whether it should be against the law to procreate, right? Obviously, that can never happen because democracy is majoritarian. So, tyranny of the majority, most people are breeders. Most people think that it's perfectly fine to breed a human being into hell to be exploited. So we're never going to win that battle. And first of all, anti-natalism is we espouse voluntary human extinction, not through compulsion. That's more of ethalists. Ethalists are they want or not just human extinction, but extinction of all sentient life through, I mean, by any means necessary. So, um, that's the difference between anti-natalism and ethalism. But here's the definition of slavery according to the 13th Amendment, or not the definition, but this is what it says. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. What crime did any of us commit, right? None of us committed any damn crimes. We were bred into hell without our consent, and now we're being punished for our parents' selfishness and ignorance. Now we're wage slaves. Now we have to obey not just our parents, but we have to obey the system. That sounds like slavery. Um, and here's the second part: Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Okay, so when is Congress going to pass a law preventing these breeders from imposing life onto their children? Now, there is a difference. An anarchistic version of parenting, which I think is kind of paradoxical because I don't think you can be an anarchist and a breeder at the same time. You just impose life on someone without their consent. But it is more libertarian, and I use that in the correct way, not the way these libertarians. They're not real these white right wing libertarians. They're not real libertarians. The way that the Europeans use it. Um, Now, anarchistic parenting is really based on Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote about a natural education where basically you don't force or you don't indoctrinate your child. They get a natural education through experience. You basically let them experience things, and they basically develop their own you don't impose a religion on them. You let them, I mean, you kind of guide them through to make sure that they're safe, but you let them learn on their own. And a natural education is a more sustainable education because when you're not indoctrinated, you learn the real way. You learn that if you touch fire, it's going to burn. It's not somebody telling you don't touch fire. You learn like I need to go through Jean-Jacques Rousseau how he explained about a natural education, but you basically don't indoctrinate your children. Um, they learn what to eat. They learn this good practices and good habits without being told. And it sticks with them because they learned it the same way a cat or a dog would learn something, right? If I had, I don't have a cat right now, but when I had a cat, if I told her or tried to punish her for jumping on a counter, she was not going to listen to me. As soon as I turned my head, she was going to do it anyway because she correlated that with me telling her to do it. But if there was a natural consequence, i.e., I put a trap on the counter, um, then she associates that punishment with the counter. So she doesn't do it even when I'm not there. So that's a natural education. That's not me trying to force her, right? She knows that there's a danger, there's a consequence, and then she's not going to do it. Okay, let's see. I have a comment. I'm told that I told my mother that she is ultimately responsible for bringing me here and the suffering I've endured, and she flat out said, "No, I'm not. I think they're too stupid to understand consequences." Um, that it's really just being dismissive. They're not really trying to hear you out. They can't. And I was trying to figure out when I did that last live stream. What was that last live stream I just did? I thought it was pretty and um I don't know. I thought it was pretty harmless, right? What was the last? What did I talk about? Oh, just about my dad and how when you raise children, no matter how they become, it's really your fault whether you chose a best partner or the system. Basically, you're responsible for that because you're the one who imposed life on them. So you can't blame. And I was trying to figure out what part of this live stream offended people that I actually lost subscribers. And it was like that was it. I was like, because that and I need to change the name of that channel because I really do want to talk about anti-natalism. It's still called Stop the Vegan. I don't want to talk about veganism. I think veganism is boring. I mean, they really took me down a rabbit hole to where I got sidetracked. To me, it's nonsense. I have no desire to talk about veganism. It's a dead issue. They may think it's important. I don't want to talk about it. I think there are human beings that are suffering. If you alleviate human suffering, then that's going to take care of animal suffering. So put your mask on first, and then you can worry about the animals later. So they don't want to accept responsibility. So those people were on my channel because they want to hear me bash vegans. But if I talk about anti-natalism and these people are breeders, so I really got to choose one. I can't do both. I can't bash vegans while also being an anti-natalist because they're not in alignment. You're either going to be an anti-vegan or you're going to be an anti-natalist. But most apparently most anti-natalists are vegan. And so anyway, I don't need I need to figure out what to do with my channel because I do want to talk about anti-natalism. I just don't want to I don't want to talk about veganism. I think it's boring. Um but yeah. So they're not going to accept responsibility, right? They want to. It's always somebody else, right? And I guess they could say I'm doing the same thing because I'm consuming animal products, and I'm eventually going to address that because I found a really good article which addresses that really the person to blame are the parents that they impose life on you, knowing that eating animals is a natural part of your diet. You should not have to bite the bullet and struggle and go against your nature because of a decision they made. So it's completely their fault. I mean, and that first of all, that's the conclusion. Whatever your mom said, that's the conclusion. Where's their argument? It's what did she say? She felt, no, I'm not. Okay, that's like I know you. I know you are. But what am I? Like that's very childish. No, I'm not. That what kind of argument is that? Anyway, I'm not going to read all of this, but if some of these articles that I don't want to sit there and read it, 'cause I know that's boring, but sometimes it highlights things and then I can address it as I'm going through them. But it is generally acknowledged that in the past, children had the legal status of property. A lot of people don't know that. I know that they know that women were property, but children were also property. They were basically traded in the stock market. The state could not interfere with parenting because your children belong to you. Um, and in some way, in one aspect, that was almost a good thing because if the state took your child, they actually have to compensate you for it. But now that children are not property, they can take your children away, and they don't have to give you shit for it. I mean, there are legitimate arguments for why children are not property like in a like buying a car, but in a sense just like your arm or your leg. Like your children came from you, so they're biologically an extension of you. At some point, okay, when they're okay, what even when it comes to psychology, like Carl Jung talked about that basically when a child is an infant, they're basically one with the mother. They don't even see themselves as separate autonomous beings. The individuation process happens much later, but the child, even the infant, does not see himself or herself as separate from their mother until individuation really doesn't happen until like 5 or 6 or I don't know. Yeah, you see your mother. It's more about the mother than the father. So anyway, in early Rome, along with their mothers and slaves, they were used, talking about children, sold or disposed at the will of the head of the family, even to the point of death. In other societies, it was allegedly common for unwanted infants to be exposed and left to die. That's what I was telling y'all before, about procreation or abortion rights. They're trying to act like abortion came out of nowhere. There was no history for it. No, back in the day, they were leaving their children out in the woods. So that was the family planning, that you just basically, when you didn't want a child, you just left them out in the woods and nobody said anything. Now, I told y'all about common law that if a child died under the age of 1, nobody would investigate it because um, they were protecting the right to privacy, which the right to privacy is not something new. It existed under common law way back in the 1600s or probably earlier than that. I don't know why they're acting like abortion is something. I mean, abortion is new, but infanticide was going on way back then. So this isn't a new invention. Um, if I keep talking, I'm not even going to. I have so much commentary. I'm not even going to get through this content. In England, long after the practice of exposure of infants ceased, children and their mothers remained the chattels of the father until comparatively recent times. Parental rights then were property rights residing in the father. Exactly. The father owned the wife and the children. The mother, being herself property, could have no such rights. Things have now changed because of the comparative emancipation of women, and in particular, the change of the legal status of a wife. A mother is now legally a parent and has the same parental rights as the father. At the same time, no doubt because of these changes in the position of women, but also, I suspect, because of the changes of our general attitudes to human rights and to ownership of people and to slavery in general, the position of the child has changed. Children are no longer legally the property of their parents, and we find it morally repugnant to think of them as property at all. Um, the liberation of children from the tyranny of parents, school teachers, and adults generally is well on the way. Their rights to decide where they live, who their friends shall be, and with whom they can have sex, for example, have yet to gain legal recognition. By the way, in the law, if you, I believe once you, well, in my state, when you reach the age of 12, you can decide which parent you want to live with. So you have some say in that. But at the end of the day, you don't have any rights. I mean, until you become emancipated and then you just basically just become a slave to the state. So you're just a slave all the way around. Um, In the meantime, one consequence of both parents coming to have equal parental rights has been the emergence of the principle that the welfare of the child is paramount as the primary principle of equity in the courts in cases involving disputes between parents or between parents and various authorities over who shall have custody. For example, under common law, the wishes of the father would have been respected. Right, under common law, it was always a father, and that's not even that long ago. Even um basically until child support became like the norm, it was always about the father because it was presumed that because the men were the income earners, that it would be in the best interest of the child to go with the father, and then the father would just have to marry some woman to become the stepmom. Um, I'm this okay. All right. Yeah, this talks about necessity and the reason why we give deference to parents because they're saying that, I mean, they're trying to make it seem like it's something noble, that the reason that we give deference to parents is not because they're property, it's because parents care for their children. And no, 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 no. I mean, and this article right here really does address it. It's not about care, it's about control. Your child is a mini me. Um, like I told y'all, because my father could not control me, and I didn't tolerate his abuse, he basically disinherit. I mean, it wasn't a full disinheritance. It was just his money, right? Which is kind of the most important part, because those are the liquid assets, as opposed to the house, which my brother's fixing up, and it's going to take time to sell. But the money, he he gave it to my aunt to try to put me in my place, because I tolerated his abuse for my entire life, but for a short period, I just couldn't deal with it. So this is the reality, that they act like they care about you, but they show their true colors. It takes the right situation for them to show that no, you don't exist for your own purpose. You're not an end unto yourself. You are an end for your parents. That they created you. Okay, this article really explains, and I'm not going to read the entire thing, but basically, parents have a God complex, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, because I don't know if this may get boring. People may not still be along, but um, basically, like in the Bible, where it says that God created us in His image, parents create children in their own image, and so they try. There's a no nature and a nurture component. Um, that they want a biological replica of themselves, but they also want to nurture the traits that they think are most desirable. That's their motive for procreation, and they get some kind of satisfaction out of creating this human. It's almost like a science project, or you're building a robot. Like, it's not. They see it, like they get pleasure out of watching you grow and develop. Um, but they want it for their own purposes. It's not for your It never is. It's not even possible for it to be for your purposes. They have this idea of what you're going to look like, how you're going to behave, and if you deviate from that, that is a problem. They wanted you to be straight. You came out gay. Okay, that's a problem. They wanted you to be successful and have this certain career. You didn't do that. Okay, you have thoughts that you don't agree. Your parent was a Republican. You're a Democrat. Okay, well, I can't control you anymore. So now, basically, fuck you. I'm going to disinherit you. You go figure out what you're going to do with the rest of you. Even though I imposed life on you, even though you're here because I put you here. Um, the law says that you're only responsible up until the age of 18. Then I can cut. No, 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 no. You didn't create just a cute little baby. You created a full human being who's going to have to navigate through this world. A human being who you did not teach anything to have any survival skills. Um, you the child is entitled to whatever you have. That's your responsibility. That's maybe it's not a legal responsibility, but it is an ethical responsibility. It's an equity. It's a moral and an ethical responsibility. So um by the way, okay, I may do a separate I just got there's some developments in that case with my aunt, that I thought I was going to have to go into all this shit about wrongful life and all the suffering that my dad imposed on me, which I could do. I'm trying to decide whether I still want to do that, but I really don't want to jeopardize that case trying to promote anti-natalism. At the end of the day, I just want to get the money and just be done with it. And my aunt just gave me some documents and discovered this is going to be a very easy case. Um, which I mean, I can just say quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on that. Basically, the transfer on, or what is it called? The payable on death designation that my dad signed. I didn't know what it said. I didn't know if it was signed. I didn't know what it said, or how it was filled out. But she just gave it to me in discovery, and she's so arrogant. She doesn't even know what she just gave me, right? Um, he didn't check off the box which says with rights of survivorship. So if it doesn't, he didn't convey a right of survivorship. So when he dies, her interest in that also dies, which means it passes on to his heirs or to the living trust, which he's already signed and had notarized. So this genius really thought that she was putting me in my place to say, oh, I have proof that he gave it to me. No, he did not. You don't have any survivorship rights, so it passes on to me and my brother. So um this is a checkmate. She didn't even realize what I'm about to do, and I got plans for her. She's about to learn real hard that she went up against the wrong one. And because if I did not have that as evidence, I was going to have to basically sue my father's estate and basically have to trash his name for trying to fuck me over. So now I don't necessarily have to do that. I could just do it just for shits and giggles, just to get. But I don't know. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't want to risk losing this case. It's more money than I even realized it was, and I could do a lot with that. I could even promote anti-natalism or whatever else I want to do. I don't want to risk losing that money trying to make a point. So anyway, let me see if I have any comments. Yeah, she's gonna learn. She's gonna learn the hard way. She fucked with the wrong one. And she sit up there spending that money like it's her. She's oh gosh, I got plans for her. Um, and I'm not treating her with kid gloves just because she's family. No, she didn't treat me with kid gloves. She was going to take. Oh my gosh, when I see how much money it was, and then she tried to give me that little tiny bit. Oh fuck that shit. Anyway, so here's another article. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll just read a few bits of it and just get to the point. Um, Children. Oh, this is the one I was supposed to read first. I started in the wrong order. Children are among the most vulnerable and the most victimized examples. In part, children are victimized by their own immediate caretakers. As David Beckham remarks, it is now an open secret that people torture and kill their own children or children in their charge. Right. Um, I don't know. I think now, okay, so Noam Chomsky addresses that children don't have rights. And the reason that children don't have rights is because rights are based on a social contract. You can't have rights without duties, at least under natural law. Basically, I don't harm you if you agree not to harm me. Um, Now children have legal rights, but they're not really rights. It's more they're basically privileges that an adult has to speak on behalf of the child. So it's a legal fiction. Children can't legally have. I mean, well, okay, they have legal rights, but they can't have natural rights, um, because they're basically slaves. And yeah, so okay, so I said you have to have a duty and a right. Basically, the duty of the child is to obey. Um, and then in exchange for that, they're supposed to get protection and provision. Um, but that's all they get. That's all they get. They don't. I mean, what other what other privileges do you get for being a child other than maybe somebody feeding you and wiping your ass? You don't have any damn rights. Children have been whipped, beaten, starved, drowned, smashed against walls, and that's by the way that's in the Bible right there. That's biblical shit. I don't know why these Christians think that abortion is somehow wrong when the Bible is telling people to smash babies against rocks. Um, excuse me, babies out of the mother's stomach. That's all in the Old Testament. I did a whole live stream about that. That was probably about a year and a half ago. That these Christians are so dumb they think that the Bible condemns abortion. No, the Bible actually promotes infanticide, which is far worse than abortion. Children have been whipped, beaten, starved, drowned, smashed against walls and floors, held in ice water baths, exposed to extremes of outdoor temperature, burnt with hot irons and steam pipes. Children have been tied and kept in upright positions for long periods. Right? I don't know if y'all remember, but I don't even know if they still do that because when I went to a summer camp, and then I had this like daycare uh program from hell where I mean they couldn't hit us, but they would make us stand in a corner with phone books on our heads, and then you had to stand on one leg and all this shit. So yeah, it's just, I mean, that's some slave shit right there. But I mean, and I know that white people get beatings too, so I'm not going to sit up here and say that this is exclusive to black people, but it is prevalent in the black community that they beat you like a damn slave. It's some shit out of roots, so they just get a fucking extension cord. I mean, when I talk about the beatings that I got, and I say that to my white friends, they're like mortified. They didn't get beatings like that. I'm not going to say that all of them didn't, but that's very prevalent in the black community that they just want to beat the shit out you, and that's their form of discipline. That's how they. There's no conversation. There's no learning. There's no explanation. You may not even be at fault. You may not have done nothing wrong, but they don't beat you out of discipline. They beat you out of anger. They're angry, so they're taking the frustration out on you. And because you're a slave, you don't have any right. You don't have a right to defend yourself. If you call the police or do something, they're just going to retaliate even more. All the adults in your family are going to side with the adult because who the hell are you? You're just a fucking child. You should be grateful that your mother even fed you, right? Even though you didn't ask for any of that shit. They have been systematically exposed to electric shock, forced to swallow peppers, soil, feces. Ugh. I don't want to talk about my niece. This is the reason why I try to stay anonymous, because if I tell y'all about things going on in my family, whatever, y'all don't know who the hell I'm talking about. But yeah, it wasn't my niece, but it were her half siblings. The mother. I don't even know if I should say that because I don't. Yeah, she did some really abusive shit, and even though it didn't happen to my niece, she witnessed it, and I know that had to have some type of psychological effect on her. Um, Urine, vinegar, alcohol, and other odious materials burned alive, had scalding water poured over their genitals. Well, here's the ignorant thing about that, right? That first of all, according to the Kabbalah, even according to Schopenhauer, we are all one. And so what you do to somebody else, you're really doing to yourself. So the fact that you think that you're doing this to your child and it doesn't come back on you is ignorant. When you abuse your children, you are really abusing yourself. And then that is reflected in society. So the child that you abused is now going to grow up abusing women, committing crimes, doing all kind of shit, and now you feel like you're a victim because somebody beat the shit out you. Where did he learn it? He learned it from his damn parents who beat the shit out of him, right? And they try to justify it to say that if you don't beat your children, they're gonna run up. No, 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 no. You're just turning them into a violent criminal because you were violent and you didn't have any sense of justice or fairness. You just beat people out of emotion. Um, this is some slave shit. Um, yeah. I mean, you can watch a slave movie and see a slave getting beaten, and it's really analogous to what a lot of us went through. With instead of a horse whip, a lot of us has got the extension cord. It's the same damn thing. Yeah, however morally repulsive, the widespread practice of direct child abuse by caretakers is a theology of liberation, forces us to attend as well to those systemic conditions of our own common life, economic, social, political, whose effects on the lives of children are at least equally violative of the meaning of childhood as direct physical abuse, if not more so. The lives of children are sharply delimited and irreparably damaged and degraded by structural. By the way, y'all, I know y'all can hear me the way I talk right now. I thought it was just allergies, but I just went to the doctor and found out I actually have, what is it called? Ball's palsy or something, where it's basically related to the chicken pox. And then basically the left side of my face is paralyzed. So it's just, yeah, it's just weird. I know it's not relevant, but the way I'm talking is because of that condition. It's supposed to be temporary. I'm on all these drugs right now, and so it is what it is. And Um, this is all the shit that happens when you impose life on people. They're going to have all these physical elements. They're going to, and I still got to go to work and put on a fucking smile. I can't even fucking smile because the left side of my face doesn't fucking move. Um, Freedom in a negative sense, freedom from dignifies the absence of external obstacles and the pursuit of one's desires, liberation in this process of removing obstacles, smashing barriers, destroying constraints. In a political life, the constraints take the form of social domination, elite rule, oligarchic control. Um, well, here's the thing: you have so this is the negative freedom, right? What about the freedom from life? What about the freedom of non-existence? To not be controlled by your parents, not to be controlled by the government. I mean, people just think that these things are just natural and this is the way it's supposed to. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Um, and then we have affirmative freedom by contrast means empowerment. Affirmative freedom as self-development, a freedom to develop oneself through one's actions as a process of realizing one's project through activity and of course of one's character and develop capacities. Now, Emma Goldman, if I ever get a chance to get back to her, she did this, or she wrote a chapter in her book about children and its enemies. This is basically the way that parents indoctrinate their children to be automatons. This robots. Um, yeah, basically, society is the child's and what she wrote was really based on Jacques Rousseau. She was talking about the indoctrination of children through society, that children are not allowed to get a natural education, that they're told to behave a certain way. They're told that boys do this, girls do this. You must um, sit a certain way. You can't um, have your own thoughts. And so I don't know, how would any of us be if we weren't indoctrinated? I mean, I've really worked on myself to come out of the indoctrination of society, my parents, to where um I'm not going to say I'm not indoctrinated anymore, but I work on it. There's a lot of, I mean, I'm open to new ideas, even when people tell me like this, the sky is blue. I'm still questioning that. That's what Socrates said. The wise man, Socrates was the wisest man because he knew nothing. It doesn't mean that he literally did not know anything. It means he questioned everything because that's how you get to true knowledge. Don't accept things as fact just because somebody told you. He used that whole Socratic or dialectic debate, and then you get to the point. So yeah, you question everything. Don't, and just because your parents told you something, you don't necessarily have to stick with that for the rest of your life. It's very difficult, especially when it comes to religion. That was a hard one for me coming out of Christianity. That I was a slave to that shit. That shit was deeply entrenched into my brain that I thought heaven hell was real. And when I didn't talk to my dad for that period of time, I felt my mind expanding. I really was open to a lot of ideas. And then when I um reconnected with him, I felt like he was really pulling me back into that state of ignorance that, oh, he still believes in hell. He thinks that hell is a literal place. He still believes that parents did their children a favor by imposing life on them. Like, I don't know. I guess because I felt that I evolved, I don't know. I just felt that that he magically evolved with me, and no, he was still stuck in the same place and still trying to get the last word, thinking he was right. And I'm so glad that I really stepped away for that period because it just allowed me to clear my mind without all that shit being poured into my head. Gosh, man, is parents really fuck their children up with all their bullshit? There was a part from that article the first article that I wanted to. I'm going to wrap this up because I see I'm losing, and I always lose people when I do this shit. But I went out of order, and there was a part that I wanted to address at the very end about socialism. By the way, let me talk about what Socrates. Yeah, with Socrates. Socrates espoused the notion he wanted orgies, right? Because and it was a political statement because he believed that if fathers didn't know who their children were, then they would just care for all the children. So, um, yeah, that was his. No, that was. Sometimes I get Plato. No, it was Plato. It was Plato writing about Socrates. It was Plato's Republic. Um, it was talking about socialism. Here it is at the end. I skipped all the important stuff because I think I'm losing people, and I'm not going to go back and try to finish up. I'm just going to do this last bit, and then I'm going to go. Okay. There is also a long tradition of socialist thought that calls for the dissolution of the family as a necessary means of achieving equality for women and children. Radical socialists tend to see the nuclear family as an institution designed to serve the interests of capitalism and to regard family values, including parental rights, as mere products of the dominant capitalist ideology. Could parenthood and a system of parental rights exist in a socialist society? No, no, I would answer that because in a socialist society, nobody would own children. Children would belong to everybody, or they would, children would be just a part of the community just like everybody else. So the fact that you think that your children are yours, and that you get to do whatever you want with your children, that could not exist in a socialist society. Not that I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, I don't necessarily want children to be influenced by the collective, um to where you can say, oh well, I think that you should raise your children to be this way. And no, I don't necessarily believe that, but I believe in a natural education. um I think the influence of society is just as illegitimate as the influence of a biological parent, that it should really be the child um experiencing a natural education in a state of nature, like John Jacques Rousseau explained, which eventually I'm going to get back to that. But here's the second question: is parenthood, as described in this paper, compatible with equality for women and children? Um, and that's the part that I skipped over, which I'm not going to go back to. But basically, it's all linked because it's all based on patriarchy. That um, the father is the head of the family, and so the women and children are basically just his property. So I mean, we've evolved to some extent to where women are not property, but children are still basically oh gosh, I wanted to address all that, but basically explains how even though children are not technically regarded as property, they're basically traded, excuse me, in the stock market. Like when it comes to custody disputes and adoption and all that stuff, they're basically just traded off like pets. That I own you for this amount of time and this and that. Yeah, I didn't get to all that, but I think I don't think it's necessary to go back and explain all that. Maybe when I do these, maybe I should just take notes and not actually read from the article because I think that probably would save more time. But anyway, do I have any comments? No. But yeah, basically, children are slaves. They are property. Your parents do own you. So for the anti-natalists who say that breeding should be illegal, it already is illegal. It's just not being enforced. Children are slaves. And so if you enforce the 13th Amendment against parents, right? And by the way, if I didn't have this evidence that my aunt produced showing that it's legally not her money, I was going to use that as an argument. I was going to use wrongful life, enslavement, unjust not just against her, but unjust enrichment against my father. That he wanted a family, he imposed life on me, that all of this was for his benefit. he got a family. I had to obey him for all those years. And so I feel that I'm entitled to whatever he has. Um, I don't think it's necessary for me to do all that because I think I can get the money. I'm going to be filing a motion for summary judgment very soon. So somebody asked me to post that stuff on a live. Mm, I don't know if I necessarily want to do that because I do want to protect my privacy. And this is not just for entertainment. This is my life. That's a lot of money that could really help me. I'm not risking that just for the sake of entertaining people on YouTube. Especially, I don't even have that many subscribers on that channel, and I'm losing subscribers just by talking about topics like these. So it's not in my rational self interest. My channel's that channel's not even monetized. So why should I risk that money just out of curiosity? It's not worth it. So anyway, thank y'all for those of you who were here. And if those of you who weren't here, you can post a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think. But yeah, I think that procreation is slavery, not just for your parents, but you're basically going to become a slave to the system. And because it is involuntary servitude, it is already unlawful to do that. So, I mean, who's going to argue that, right? Laws are there on the books, but who's going to actually argue that? Um, and the first time somebody argues it, they're going to be ridiculed. But then, so if I were to argue it, nobody's going to take me seriously because it would be a novel argument, right? But if it does gain momentum and other people start doing it too, and say legally it meets all the indicia of slavery, right? I explained to y'all that slavery is the deprivation of the right to dispose of one's life, property, and services, and you don't have either of that when you're a child. So you are a slave by definition, and it violates the 13th Amendment. So, um, it doesn't even matter whether it's slavery or not. But the bottom line is that parents need to really think about the fact that they are not doing their children any favors. Stop thinking that your children owe you. No, your child is the slave. You created the child. You owe your child everything. And no matter how they came out, it's your fault. It's because of your child rearing or lack thereof. So even if your child comes out fucked up, that is your fault. You still have a moral opportunity to provide for them after your death. So I'm going to go ahead and get off here. Y'all have a good night, and I will be doing another live stream soon.